Today, we're going to tackle one of the oldest and honestly, one of the most profound intellectual puzzles in human history. It's a single, simple sentence that basically acts like a black hole for logic, threatening to swallow the very idea of truth. So let's dive in.
That's it, just four little words. But these four words create a riddle that has stumped philosophers, logicians, and mathematicians for more than 2,000 years. And that right there is the central question. How is this possible? For this explainer, I want you to think of us as detectives. We're investigating a sentence that seems to have committed the perfect, unbreakable logical crime.
Now, to understand how this sentence pulls off its crime, we first need to know the laws it breaks. These are the absolute fundamental rules that our entire system of reason is built on. Okay, so here are the bedrock principles of logic. Think of them as the constitution for rational thought. First, you've got the principle of bivalence. Basically, any statement is either true or it's false. Then there's the law of non-contradiction, which says it can't be both at the same time. And finally, the law of the excluded middle, which means there's no secret third option. It has to be one or the other. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, let's bring our suspect into the interrogation room.
Let's go back to the scene of the crime and watch exactly how these four words turn our beautiful, orderly system of logic into a sputtering, smoke-belching contradiction machine. All right, let's walk through this together. Let's just assume for a second that the statement is true. Okay, so if this statement is false is a true statement, then what it asserts must be correct, which means the statement has to be false. Whoa, wait, that's a flat-out contradiction. It can't be both true and false. So, okay, that didn't work. Let's try the other way. Let's assume the statement is false. Well, if it's false, then what it claims is wrong. The statement claims that it's false, so if that's wrong, then the statement must actually be true. And boom, we hit another contradiction. We are completely stuck in an infinite loop where it's true if and only if it's false, and false if and only if it's true.
So you might be thinking, okay, it's a weird riddle, but who cares? Well, here's why it's a huge deal. In logic, there's something called the principle of explosion. It's like if you allow just one drop of poison into a well, the entire well is contaminated. A single contradiction in a logical system means you can use that one flaw to prove anything, literally anything. You can prove that 2 + 2 = 5. You can prove that the moon is made of cheese. The entire system becomes totally useless for figuring out what's true.
And here's the kicker. This isn't some new problem we just stumbled upon. This is a cold case, a mystery that has been hunting some of these sharpest minds on the planet for millennia. The trail goes way, way back to ancient Greece, where the first known version was posed. From there, the Stoic philosophers practically obsessed over it. You jump forward to the medieval period, and scholars are studying it under the name insolubilia, which literally means the insolubles. And then in the 20th century, it rears its head again right at the heart of modern mathematics, giving giants of logic a massive headache. I mean, the intellectual torment this thing caused was so real, it became the stuff of legends. Now, it's probably just a story, but the fact that people told it shows you just how maddeningly difficult this problem was. So, has anyone ever cracked it? Well, people have definitely tried. Let's line up the main theories, like different detectives, each with their own unique way of trying to solve this impossible case. Okay, detective number one is the logician Alfred Tarski. He argued the problem is that our language is trying to talk about its own truth, which he said is illegal. His solution? Create a strict hierarchy. Imagine you have a ground floor language, the object language, that can only talk about the world. You know, the cat is on the mat. To say whether that sentence is true, you have to go up to the second floor, the meta language. The liar paradox gets caught trying to use the elevator between floors, so Tarski's solution is to just shut the elevator down. Our next approach is totally different. Instead of banning the sentence, this theory tries to find a loophole in the law. It says, hey, what if not every sentence has to be true or false? It creates a third category, undefined. The liar sentence isn't true and it isn't false. It just falls into this logical gap, and the whole paradox just kind of dissolves. And now for our most radical detective. This one, dialechism, walks up to the crime scene, looks at the contradiction, and says, what if there's no crime here at all? This theory claims some statements, like the liar, are just both true and false. It says the paradox isn't a problem to be solved, it's just a feature of reality. It embraces the contradiction. But as you can see here, there's no free lunch. Every single one of these solutions comes with a heavy price tag.
If you go with Tarski, you have to give up on the idea that our everyday language can talk about everything. If you like the idea of truth-value gaps, you have to throw out the law of the excluded middle. And if you're brave enough to go with dialethism, you have to abandon the most sacred rule of all, the law of non-contradiction. To solve the puzzle, you have to break one of the fundamental rules of logic. And that is why this case remains wide open. The paradox is so powerful because every attempt to lock it away just ends up revealing something deep and unsettling about truth, language, and logic itself. And what's even crazier is that when you try to solve it, the paradox often comes back in a new, more powerful form. They call these revenge paradoxes. For example, remember the undefined solution? Okay, fine, the original liar is undefined. But what about this sentence? This statement is not true. If you say that statement is false, well, you've just agreed with it, which makes it true. If you say it's true, it must be false. It just comes roaring back, angrier than before. And this is exactly why this whole thing matters so much beyond just being a fun brain teaser. The very same kind of self-reference at the heart of the liar paradox is what Kurt Gödel used to prove that any system of math will always have true things it can't prove. It's also at the core of Alan Turing's proof that you can never build a perfect computer program that can predict if any other program will crash. And in AI today, you have to design systems to avoid these self-referential loops or they'll just freeze up. These aren't just riddles. They are fundamental limits on what we can know and compute. So, we end up right back where we started, with a big, looming question. The liar paradox isn't just a puzzle. It's a mirror. It forces us to see the hard limits built into our own systems of reason. It tells us that the very tools we use to make sense of the universe have boundaries. And that leaves you wondering, what else might be lying just beyond them, impossible for us to ever truly know?